Welcome to our first and a more advanced series of Photoshop tutorials. Here we'll talk about some interesting settings and techniques that will get you more acquainted with Photoshop in general. Let's talk about curves. Curves is a setting in Photoshop that allows you to get richer tones and colors in your pictures. To start, we've opened up our usual coffee image here, and we'll click on the Image drop-down, then Adjustments, then Curves. You can also hit Ctrl+M at the same time. Doing this will open the Curves window, which looks like a neat graph chart. In the middle, you should be seeing a line going from the bottom left to the top right. If you want to apply a quick preset which will set the settings for you, you can click the drop-down and change from the default to other settings in the list. Setting the color preset to color negative changes some things here, which we'll explain. As you can see, the individual values on the chart have changed. The original black line is still the same, but each individual color has changed. This is a permanent way to change the values of the image, but if we wanted to make it something a little less permanent and tweak the settings as we edit our image, we can make a new layer by going to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and then Curves. This will allow us to have our own layer that we can edit the properties of in the Properties window. So over here in our Properties window, you can see that we can edit our curves just like the image edit we were doing before, but it is not permanent as we can hide or unhide the layer using the I button next to the layer. So the main thing to take away from curves is reading the histogram and placing points. We can place points on the histogram so we can change the color changes anywhere in the image, based on the dark spots or the lighter spots of the image. As you can see on our image, the shadows and highlights of our image aren't very great, so we can edit our colors without much interference. So if we put one point in the middle, one point on the end, and one point on the beginning, we can change the colors and alter them in subtle or more advanced ways. Curves help out many Photoshop users with images that have bad contrast or bad lighting. Use curves next time you have an image that needs tweaking. It's one of the most powerful tools in Photoshop's arsenal. Tutorials. This time we'll talk about some features that are similar to curves, but do things in a more individual way. Brightness, contrast, and exposure. Just like before, we'll start out with our image available. As before, we could alter the image from the Image drop-down and brightness and contrast under the adjustments, but we'll create a new layer using Layer, New Adjustment Layer, then brightness and contrast. That way we can adjust without permanently changing the image. Once in the adjustment layer, we can see that we have a brightness slider and a contrast slider. Tweak your image using these settings. Left is less brightness, making it darker. Right is more, making it lighter. Negative contrast washes out the colors, while positive contrast makes the colors stand out more, but it can make the shadows too dark. Next, we'll add an exposure layer. Go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, then Exposure Layer. Doing this, you can see we have more sliders here. The exposure slider going from negative to positive can darken and lighten the image much like the previous layers. Offset itself changes the absolute light and darkness in the image, so treat that option with care. Gamma correction allows you to add and subtract gamma, general lighting, to the entire image. It starts out at 1, and going left adds more gamma, while going right subtracts gamma. Using all these options allows you to tweak the image as you see fit, so you can make best use of lighting to get the image you want right for your projects. Advanced tutorial in our Photoshop series. We'll be talking about the hue and saturation layer, which works similar to our other layer and adjustment tutorials. Here I have my own image open from before. To set up a hue and saturation layer, just like before, we'll go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, then put a new hue and saturation layer down on top of the original image. So with hue and saturation, we can see that we can adjust the layer's color's hue. The saturation, how deep the colors are, or how light they are, to grayscale. or lightness. How dark or light in general the image is. In an image, you can make the colors much more vibrant by sliding the saturation more to the right than usual. Here we can see our coffee image stand out much more visually. And if we change the hue towards more of a red spectrum, we can get the coffee image to be very strong in color indeed. Use the lightness slider to make sure that things aren't too bright, as extremely vibrant color can be akin to looking into the sun for some viewers of your images. That's all for this tutorial, as you can change images you see fit to make them pop.